Music City Social is produced by Star Maker PR Group, providing publicity and public relations services to the entertainment industry. Learn more at starmakerpr.com.
Every now and then, I'll meet someone that I can just tell they know what the hell is going on in the music business. Louis Newman is one of those people. Louis has lived a life of music and music business. He had a good start. He was born from father Tony Newman, who is considered by many to be one of the greatest drummers of 60s and 70s classic rock. Because of his dad, Louis grew up with drums scattered throughout the house. At the age of 2, Louis's parents moved from London to Nashville in hopes of finding a better place to raise their family. Practicing nearly all day and night, Louis, at the young age of 15, moved back to London, where he created an almost instant career as a successful session drummer. 8 years later, a little burnt out on the London music scene, missing his family, he left London and returned to Nashville, where he has finally found a home in the business of music as both a producer and a manager. His company, Flying Island Entertainment, is where he manages acts like Gwen Sebastian, Ty Herndon, and many more. Louis has a perspective on the music business that is both smart and refreshing. I have a feeling that very soon, the name Louis Newman will be synonymous with many successful names in the music industry. Let's start at the beginning.
All right.
Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in London, England, and then my dad was a professional drummer and moved us over here when I was about 2 years old. And from the time I was 2 until I was 15, I grew up around Nashville area, from Nashville to Franklin. And then when I was 15, I moved back to London.
Really?
And, yeah, I was really fortunate when I became a professional musician when I was 15.
Wow.
And it's all been downhill since there. So, it moved over there and stayed there till I was about 23, 24, and then came back over here, and I'm no longer 23 or 24.
Gotcha.
I've been here for about another 12 years since then.
Wow. You have a little bit of accent.
Well, I can talk like this as well, but then nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There you
go.
To speak to my parents, my accent goes in and out. I never notice it. So I guess I'm a English redneck. I don't know what I am half the time. I wake up sometimes I'm American, sometimes I'm English, and it's odd, but you kind of go with what you're given.
Sure. So I got to ask, why did your dad move here when you were 2?
My dad moved here. There was a very successful songwriter named Roger Cook.
Yeah.
Roger Cook wrote "I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing," and amongst other bazillion songs that he's put together. And he wanted my dad to come over and play on some demos. And so he came over. My dad really liked it. And then soon after that, he got the Crystal Gale gig, which was at the time, it was a really, really good gig to have, and wanted to move to America. And my dad was just coming off a pretty successful rock and roll career, so it was actually quite a big leap. And it was the lifestyle, I think, is what kept us all here, and it was a new family. I had just been born, and my dad's actually I've got an older half brother and an older half sister in England. And so it was a big move. It was like, we came over here, it was me and my mom, and I was just a little munchkin. And I think it was the lifestyle that drew us here. Obviously, the music industry in Nashville is second to none. It's right on par with all the other major cities in the world. So musically, it was a good place to be. The way of life here is certainly conducive to raising a family, I think.
Sure.
And it just stuck. I should probably ask my dad that same question. Go, what did it? That's how I understand it, though. And
where were you living in England?
I was in London.
In London?
Yeah, Willesden Green, which is sort of northwest London, is where I made my base out of. I also spent some time living with my older half-brother, just about an hour outside of London. But the scene was in London for me, and I was getting my work in London, so that's where I needed to go.
If you're in the music business and you're in London, is that like living in an LA or New York?
Yeah, it's very similar to New York lifestyle.
Okay.
Yeah,
so not good for families.
No, absolutely not. And London is it's intense. It's very much New York City. That's the best comparison I have. Even the culture and everything about it, the population's very. In fact, I think it surpasses New York by quite a bit.
Wow.
and you have, you know, all the European culture that comes through London. It's a very eclectic mix of people you get there. Fascinating city, fascinating, but certainly not where you most conducive to raising a family, and it's very, very, very competitive, very cutthroat, similar to New York, and
it sounds just like New York.
Yeah, no, that's it. It'll if you're not careful, London will just take your head off.
So your dad, obviously an incredible drummer who played with Jeff Beck, Rod Stewart. I mean, the names of the 60s and 70s. And so you pick up that talent as well. You're a drummer.
Yeah, I started with drumming. It was always around the house. It was something I love, you know, from a very early age. I just had a great love of music, and then there was drums around. I tried to play guitar, I tried to play bass, and it just wasn't my deal.
Right.
And the drums just came very naturally to me, so it's what we kind of went to, and my dad would sort of give me some pointers here and there, although he's not the most patient of teachers, so it was more just don't do that, do this instead, and then I'd figure it out on my own. But so you know, through my dad, it kind of led to drums around the house. It was and they were loud, which was great for me. Nice and loud was a good thing. I could zone out the rest of the world. Yeah,
I had two problems growing up. One, my mom played piano, and drums were noisy. And so I was only allowed to practice so much before, you know, I had to stop. And second, there just wasn't a whole lot of music in our house.
Right.
And so as you and I were talking when you first came in, my son, who's almost 2, he grew up with a drum set. And the opportunities available to someone that has a musical parent,
sure,
it will change his dynamic compared to mine. And it sounds like you had what I wish I had, which was somebody to kind of lead me through.
Yeah, it's, you know, you got to find your own path, you know, and it was very funny because my interpretation of music is so much different than my dad's interpretation of music. Although we were talking about the exact same things, you know, we could play the exact same groove or beat completely differently, you know, and that's what I think the beauty of music is, you know, in your interpretation of what will sound good or what will be the way it's played compared to how your son's probably going to take it on is a different thing. And it's funny how everybody's got their own spark in music, you know, and we could all be talking put it down, like if you've ever met anybody from Scotland, you know, they're talking English, but it's incredibly difficult to understand, and it's like that's the language of music. It has different dialects and different interpretations, and literally different languages, you know. And with a drum kit, there's so many different sounds you can get out of them to start with, and so many different approaches. If you go back and you look at like the Afro-Cuban players and stuff like that, they have a totally different approach and way of thinking and way of the musical concept of what they do is just vastly different from how you'd approach it as a pop rock drummer.
Right.
And yet we're still playing music, you know, and it's still understood and grasped by millions, you know, regardless of our interpretations, which to me is just, I think that's fascinating.
I do too.
You know?
I do too. Now, you said your dad wasn't the most patient of teachers. Is there or is there now, or was there ever competition between you? Like, did your dad ever say, "Whoa, okay, you're a little better than I'd hoped you'd be"? And
you know, it's weird because my older brother's a drummer as well, and I wouldn't say there's competition, but there's definitely I don't want to say rivalry either. There's like a questioning of everything we do, you know, with my older brother as well. My older brother is just a phenomenal rock drummer. I mean, he just destroys drum kits. He gets behind them, and I've never heard volume come out of him in anything. And my dad's background was very much jazz, bebop, big band stuff.
Technique.
You know, he grew up in the Buddy Rich era. And I've sort of always led myself to more of a funk fusion R&B style with a lot of rock influence as well. So I took a lot of that in. So we've all got very distinct ways we play, which is the whole Newman family has been interesting to see how we all do our own thing, but we're all very unique, and all of us are right, as well as another problem. All of us, my dad's way is the right way, my older brother's way is the right way, and of course my way is the right way.
Sure.
So yeah, we do have we've had arguments before about how to approach things, and really what it comes down to is there's no right or wrong way to do music. You know, I see some kids like out on the street playing a bucket with the worst technique in the world, but if it's translating and it's resonating with people and they're getting what the concept is, then it's right.
Right.
And there's no argument for that, you know?
So you're living in Tennessee, and at an early age, obviously a good enough player, I'm assuming on drums, you moved to London for a career as a session drummer? Or?
I did. Well, I moved there just for a career. You know, when you're 15 years old, you know everything, and I was certainly no exception to the rule there. And I moved to London, you know, thinking I was just ready to take it on, and I was incredibly lucky. I met some phenomenal players, some great mentors, and just got the crap kicked out of me, to be honest. I went there and just got it handed to me heavy, and I had to learn more in 3 years than I think most drummers have to learn in their entire career. Wow. I just kept getting thrown into different situations. You know, I would do a reggae gig, and then a heavy metal gig, and then a jazz gig, and it was just like I wanted to, whatever gigs were coming in, I wanted to do them. I just wanted to play. That was my biggest thing. It didn't matter to me how much money I was making. It didn't matter to me where I was living. I could have been living under a bridge, but I wanted to play, and that's all I was concerned about, was just playing and getting better and getting better. And I was very lucky and just got in with a group of people that allowed me to do that. You know, right off the bat, I was touring, I was playing on sessions, I was, you know, getting thrown into these phenomenally amazing opportunities that, looking back now, doesn't happen. You know, I thought it was the norm. I thought you just do this, I'm here. You know, let's do this. And so it was unique to see it. But you know, looking back, I was just really fortunate. I was truly blessed to be given opportunities. Just to even be in situations, you know, to observe and see what other people were doing, to be in sessions and just watch what other people were doing, you know, and to hang out with producers and listen to how they make records is why I'm a producer today. Yeah. It's, you know, it just kind of evolved and it piqued my interest, and I saw how everything goes together. So it was, you never know where your path's headed.
That's true. That's very true. And you obviously had the skill, despite your age. You had the skill, or you wouldn't be in those situations.
I was a talented kid. I really was. That sounds egotistical to say, but
no, I don't think so.
Maybe not. I hope not. I don't want it to come across as that, but I worked really hard as well. You know, it was like my dad. I did have a talent. I had a knack. It was something that certainly came easier to me than it came to a lot of people. But then I remember times where I would practice 8 to 12 hours every day, to the point my school career was pathetic, because I would get my homework and I would literally put it under my floor tom, and you know, I'd be up at 5 a.m. to practice for an hour before I went to school. And then as soon as I got home, all I wanted to do was play. You know, I would get excited about, you know, I'd find one of my dad's old Zeppelin records, and I would just want to play it over and over and over and over and over again, to the point, you know, I'd get home from school at 3 o'clock and it'd be midnight and I'm still practicing, you know. And it was, you know, and luckily my parents were a little lenient on me due to, you know, my dad's background. It was they couldn't tell me not to play.
Right.
And so, you know, and then on weekends, I would wake up early in the morning, I would just go down and find as much music as I could and try and emulate all the sounds I was hearing. Even I would get incredibly analytical with it. I remember just even trying to figure out tunings. You know, I would listen to these Bonham sounds, and I'm trying to figure out why do his drums sound like that, you know. And luckily my dad had a lot of different drums around, you know, so I could take different things and hear what's the difference between a 20-inch bass drum to a 24-inch bass drum. Neat. The shallowness and different types of heads. And like I say, that was a blessing, because, you know, that was very expensive to do. You know, if you didn't have, you know, of course my dad, you know, had heads and stuff just lying around due to his profession. And he probably still doesn't know how much I used to mess with his stuff. It was like when he'd go on the road, I'd just be in the closet pulling all these snare drums out and learning how to do it. But it was just trying to figure out sounds and tunings and different techniques and different approaches, you know. And I'd spend hours not just trying to learn the parts, but actually trying to sound like the drummers. You know, I remember I'd go through Zeppelin stuff and Toto stuff, and then Will Calhoun from Living Colour was a huge influence on me, you know. And then you get into the rock stuff. I get into Tommy Lee, and then I discovered like your Buddy Rich and Jack DeJohnette and Greg Bissonette and all these great players. And I think the biggest turning point for me was discovering Vinnie Colaiuta, and that's where I really thought, oh, okay, there's a whole another realm to this.
That was Weckl for me. It was like, okay,
Weckle's
I don't know how
one.
to play now that I'm listening to this.
Yeah.
I need to start over.
I got to start over.
Yeah.
It's just wrong. Whatever I'm doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And it's Weckl was another big one. And Gad, I remember Weckl was like, Weckl's still, I think, one of the great, he might even be the greatest drummer that's ever lived, because I listen to stuff he's doing now. The stuff he was doing back in the 80s was revolutionary.
Yeah.
And now I listen to him, and, you know, you'd hear people say, oh, Weckl's got no groove and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, well, that wasn't necessarily true. But if that's what you thought, he certainly changed it now. The guy's got pocket and chops coming out the yin-yang.
Yeah. He can literally play anything.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
Well.
Yeah.
And it's people don't realize, you know, like if you look up Weckl on the All Music, he's played on a lot of pop records that you'd never know about, you know? Yeah. And what was it David, what's the name of the producer? No, of course I can't think
Foster?
of it. David Foster.
Yeah.
You know, David Foster used him on a lot of stuff. And, you know, those are no slacks. Those are guys that are really making stuff going. And it's like everybody thinks is, you know, he's just out doing this Afro-Cuban crazy stuff, and it's not. He's a working player.
Yeah.
And I've had the privilege of meeting him several times. He's also a gentleman. I've always thought he was a really nice guy and helpful. Definitely a little bit introverted, but you know, he's serious about what he does. He practices a lot, and it's an Australian drummer named Virgil Donati who's very the same way.
Yes.
And I've heard stories of Virgil to where I think Steve Vai wanted to take him on the road, and Virgil. The story goes, I don't know if this is true or not, the story goes Virgil would only go on the road if there would be a place for him to practice for 5 hours a day, you know. But it's like that just dedicated level of musicianship, and I call those guys almost the athletic, you know. They're like the Olympic athletes of drumming, you know. That's certainly far and beyond what I've ever been able to conceive, you know. And I try to take 10% of what they're bringing and make it my own. Yeah, which has been good for me.
Well, and in a lot of music that, you know, you might play in Nashville or LA or New York, there's not a need to have all of those chops at one gig. You know, for me it was always about groove, and chops came much later, and I still do not have a ton of chops. No, but I think it's why I've become I'm one of Nashville's unknown substitute drummers.
Right.
That's what I am. It's nobody knows who I am, and I get lucky and get to do all these cool gigs, and I groove just good enough to be on the gig. But man, don't throw a chart at me, because it means nothing to me. It's Chinese. Yeah. You know. So
but that's what it's about. It's about being musical, you know, and being able to. Herbie Hancock had a great thing he talked about once, where it was never practice more than you play with other people. And there's a lot to be said for that, because there's a great lesson. You know, I've certainly learned more about music playing with a bass player and playing with a guitar player. And if we get too introverted, sometimes we go out there and we enter, you know, Terry Bozzio land, where it's so far out there, and it's
the drum show.
Exactly. It's like there's no room for anybody else.
Right.
There's no musical notes left to play.
Yeah. So when you make the move to England and you're 15 years old, what came out of that? Like where did your desire lead you? Did you wind up being kind of a pop drummer, a rock drummer?
I ended up, I guess my niche was probably on the rock, funk, R&B side, is where I ended up finding my thing. I was the funky white kid is kind of what happened. And I was so young, that was kind of like kind of marketing for people as
Right.
well. You just got this, ridiculously young drummer that they'd have to get permission for me even to be able to go in the clubs and stuff.
Right.
And like I say, I just thought this was normal. I thought this is the way it goes down.
Jeez.
And, so that was kind of the niche I found, and it served me well for, years and years. And I had just a great time learning about just music, learning how to be on the road, learning how to be a cool hang with people. It's like
That's a big part of it.
Oh, it's
a lot of guys don't know that until they
Yep.
get to a city where there's lots of gigs and they're moving around and playing. I've had plenty of people tell me I'm not the greatest drummer in the world, but I'm easy to get along with.
And that's the main thing. It's if you're stuck in a van or a bus with somebody for 12 hours, you're only playing with them for 60 to 90 minutes,
Yep.
So it's more about the hang. And I think I've been fortunate enough in that same way. I've always been very easygoing. I'm enthusiastic. Everybody always gets 110%. I like to bring as much as I can to the table. I'm certainly not somebody that's just going to sit back and do what's good enough, and I've always tried to just go with the flow. Being on the road and even being in the studio, things can change very quickly, very rapidly, good or bad.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to roll with it. When that bus breaks down, don't be the guy running around kicking the tires and just complaining and whining because it's horrible.
Yeah.
Help. Figure out what you can do to help. And if you can't help, just shut up.
Yeah.
Just shut up and sit
hell
there
out
and
of
just
the way.
wait. Yeah, that's it.
So with things going well in England, why did you move back here?
I was ready to do something else.
But you risked, kind of coming here and being a nobody.
Yep, I did, and I kind of like the fight, I guess is really what it was. I was starting to establish myself over there, but I thought in my mind at the time, we're talking, I'm 23 at this point, in my mind there was only a certain place I could go to. I saw some of the politics coming in.
Yeah.
I saw the guys that were doing really well were still struggling. England's got a very difficult economy. It's got, unfortunately, the middle class is kind of being pushed out.
So there's a lot of separation.
There's a lot of separation.
Yeah.
It's you're broke or you're rich. And, unless you're in the Rolling Stones as a musician, becoming rich is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
There's certainly plenty of room in the middle class to have a great career, raise a family, do all that. But, so for that being said, it was like, even if I do really well, I'm still not where I really want to be.
Right.
And there was a producer over there who we'd been friends with. And there was just some different opportunities that were starting to come up in America. I was looking to do stuff. My family was here, my mom and dad, and I had two little brothers that I was kind of missing out on them growing up. And that was a big reason for me to grow up. I wanted to be, I guess I've always had a leader mentality, and I just wanted to be their big brother.
Yeah.
That was a big part in my life. That was, every time they come to England and visit me, I just see these. They mean the world to me, and I'd see these two little kids getting older and older, and I was like, man, I'm missing out on all this.
Yeah.
And so that was a when I wanted to come back for then, and I was really lucky when I got back here too. I probably, when I came back, I got straight back on the road.
Who was that with?
It was a band called Jive I was with, and it was when Brian Setzer thing was taking off again. Yeah. The big band swing thing was happening off, and I got on with them, and I spent about 2 years on the road with them nonstop, just right off the bat as soon as I got there. Wow. And I was burnt out of the road, and I was still doing, so I quit the road and started doing some sessions here. Tried the side guy thing in Nashville for a bit, did the artist gigs. That really wasn't for me either. The difference between Nashville and England, and the artist thing is side guys are very much side guys here, and you're a side guy, and you're known that you're a side guy. You're not part of the band. You're not part of the creative thing. If it takes off, you're not going to be part of sharing any of that.
That's right.
And that kind of bummed me out, and so I took a break. I quit music completely for about 2 years, and actually had a moving company just moving furniture for people. Wow. And we did really well. It was it was really odd. It was just sort of, doing what other people don't want to do was good. And it was a really good place because, from really the end of my teen years to now I'm, 20, I was 26 at the time. All I'd done was live out of a suitcase and play drums and play drums and play drums.
Yeah.
And I just thought maybe there's something else. And so went and moved furniture for a couple years, and it served its purpose. But I think once I cleared my head, my heart came back out, and I knew I had to do music. I never stopped doing music. It just wasn't a priority in my life. I thought, what would it be like just to have a normal job where you wake up in the morning, go to work 5 days a week, and take the weekends off. And
sure.
I did that, and it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I really wish it would have been. Because the lifestyle of a musician is horrendous most of the time. It's late hours, it's hard work.
Yeah.
You're always working. You can't take vacations because out of sight, out of mind. You miss that call one day, you don't get the gig. Well, they're on to the next guy.
That's right.
It's just cutthroat.
Yeah.
And
well, you talked about that realization of, okay, if I'm going to be a drummer, I can pretty much expect this is the top of my income bracket. Mm-hmm. It's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I had that same realization in 1990. I was touring with Lee Greenwood, actually as his concession manager, not his drummer.
Sure.
And we were playing next door at Branson, Missouri, to, who was that? Tanya Tucker's band. And her fiddle player. And I had a beer. And I just realized I am talking to a 52-year-old guy who makes $1.50 a show. And he might do 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
So his cap is $750 a week.
Yep.
And that was my realization. And I kind of did the same thing. I went, okay, well, I guess I need a job.
Yeah.
And then I started selling cars, and that led into a whole bunch of other stuff. But came back around. Okay, there's a way to do music. Maybe it's not as a drummer, but I can be in the music business and do all sorts of stuff and have more than a drummer's income.
Yeah.
It sounds like you kind of went through that same transition.
I did, and at the same time, I've really enjoyed producing people. I love arrangements. I love helping people finish their vision. I've always had a very solid business head on my shoulders, which most musicians don't. Otherwise, you wouldn't need managers and record labels and all these other people. And what I really like doing is producing from the artist's perspective, and being able to add the element of the business in there and say, because most people, they go create this great record and it's like, now what?
Yeah.
So I wanted to figure out a way of helping people. And along the way, I was doing a lot of sessions when I got back into music, a little bit of side work, a little bit of downtown, going and playing.
You only need a little bit.
Do you ever?
5 hours.
That's hardcore.
$75 plus tips.
It's hardcore, and I wasn't getting where I wanted to be, so I wanted to move more into the production side. And it was right about that time. I'd been fortunate in England to be surrounded by great producers. I knew what I wanted to do, and it's funny how things come full swing. I was actually moving Roger Cook.
Really?
I had my moving company, and Roger was in town, and he knew that I was moving. So, when you come move me? And so I moved him, and we sat down and chat, and he was kind of like, "What are you doing? Is this what you want to do?" And asked me similar questions like, "You were just, why'd you leave? What'd you do?" And I said, "I'm looking for a change." And he said, "You should find something you really believe in and do that, and do that really well." And it was within, in fact, it might have been just before then, I met Gwen Sebastian, and we were actually playing. She was a substitute singer, and I was a substitute drummer in an 80s glam pop cover band.
Who was that?
It was a band called Kung Pao.
Wow, I've heard of them.
And it was just like something to go do. I was doing my moving thing, and I was like, I just want to go. Let's just have some fun.
Be mindless.
Let's go. Just play drums. I'll put on a big, long blonde wig, wear some tight leather pants, and we'll just go have some fun. Anyway, she came along, and she was an artist looking for deals. She was a great writer.
Yeah.
I listened to her material, and I was like, this is just awesome. What's the problem? She goes, well, I can't get people to listen. I can't get people to book. I can't get people to help me. And I was like, this is, I'd never heard that story before. I just assumed that, if you had good stuff,
you show up.
You just show up.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, everybody's waiting for you. And I said, well, I'm going to help you. And that's when things kind of changed. First thing we did is we went and we started getting the band on the road. I put together a band that's actually, for the most part, still with me today, and just said, we're going to do things different. I'm going to treat my band like their family. I'm going to make them feel part of something, and they're going to be part of something. And we actually started the band, as it started as a backing band for a guy named Jason Jones, and he was on Warner Brothers for a while, and he's a amazing songwriter, and he was just getting started, and he had a development deal on RCA at the time. And so we started playing around, and then the label wanted him to go more into the songwriting stuff, and as a band we needed to work. Well, I was going, where's the gigs? We're a good band, we're not getting any, why aren't people calling? I don't know. And so because of that, I sort of started a booking agency, and I got a couple leads. There's a friend of mine, and she's at William Morris, named Abby Wells, who put me in touch with my first buyer, essentially. And I kind of learned the ropes, and it was just sort of out of necessity I started a booking agency.
Wow.
And to date, I think I booked over a couple thousand shows, but it wasn't something I wanted to do. It was something I had to do. There was a goal. We needed to work. I needed to put bread on the table. I wanted to move Gwen's career down the field, and that wasn't easy. And with Flying Island now, we have a lot of people come to us and say, I can't get booked. And I find the biggest problem with them getting booked, if the music's decent, that's the first one, is very few people are actually willing to put in the hours, and call 8 hours a day. You can make a lot of phone calls in 8 hours a day and be told no by 99% of them, but okay, well, every 100, 1 out of 100 gives you a gig. Well, that means you need to make a couple thousand phone calls, and that's literally what it takes. And because of that, we got Gwen out working to where she was doing 200, 250 shows a year.
Wow, that's strong.
Working, really, really working, and it was nothing fancy. This was 3 guys and a girl in a beat up old van, old school. You know what I mean?
Casinos, things like
Casinos, clubs, anywhere that would have us. We were there, and it didn't matter where we were going. We were out to play, and we were all on the same page. We all wanted to do this thing. And so once you're out there for the 2 or 3 years doing that, it's like there's a different level of professionalism you get to. Then there's some phenomenal players in Nashville, but when you've played with people, and you've done 1,000 shows with them, literally 1,000 shows, there's a certain level of tightness you get. And we found that was kind of a niche for us. We were just a little bit different. It was like we had, I think at some point, probably 500 plus songs in our entourage. It didn't matter, which gave us the ability to do weddings.
Yeah.
Anything you could throw at us, we could go play, 3 hours worth of dance tunes and, in the rowdiest of R&B bars, and we were fine. It didn't matter. Take us to a honky tonk, not a problem. We can do it. And then Gwen was continuing to write and build herself as an artist, which, was always the main focus, is who are you as an artist? This is great. We're out on the road. We're getting better. We're doing this. But more than anything, we've got to turn this into an art.
Right.
And so the next step is we went in and did an album after being on the road for about 3 years. And that was her first album we did in 06. It was an album we did called Invitation. It was kind of a pop, traditional country kind of thing. And I think what's important with artists, they need to spend a lot of time figuring out who they are, and don't be afraid to get in the studio, record an album, and then decide that's not what it is.
Right.
And keep moving and keep discovering what it is and discovering and pushing harder and pushing harder. And then we started to get into promotion, because it's like, okay, I got a working band here. I got a great product. Even today, the album isn't. Yeah, it isn't quite what Gwen is now. This new project we're doing right now. We got it. But it was good. It was like, okay, well, we're here. We were here. Let everybody buy it. And we went and we shopped it around, and nobody was interested. Being a female artist in country music in Nashville, Tennessee is not the easiest of things to do. In fact, it's go do real estate in New York will be easier for you. It's tough. and there's so many people that come here and get eaten alive from it.
Yep.
And so we kept going, and then we did a second album, which got a lot closer to what Gwen was doing. And this is, probably 5 years we've been going at it now. We've been total, we're at about 9 years to date, so about 5 or 6 years into it, we did our second album. And we were playing down in South Padre Island, Texas, and this guy was down there having drinks and just partying or whatever, and he looked at us and said, "I think you guys are phenomenal. I want you to come play my party." And I'm sure you've done the club scene, that you get that all the time. There's always, everybody wants to help, everybody's there, everybody knows somebody. And I was like, "Whatever, dude. Yeah, sure." And he gave me his business card and says, "I want you to call me on Monday," and whatever. Wednesday comes along, I get a call from his secretary, and she says, "Hey, he was waiting on your call. Why didn't you call him?" I was like, "I don't know." Anyway, so they put me through to him, and he said, "Hey, you were supposed to call. What's the deal?" And I said, "Well, to be honest, I thought you were kidding." He goes, "No, I really want you to come play this party. I want to try and talk to you guys and help you out." I'm like, "Oh God, here we go. No, it's somebody else trying to help." But okay, and he was out in Wyoming, and he said, "Well, send me your price." And so I did the pricing, and I probably was a little on the high end of the pricing looking back at it, just because I thought it was a joke anyway. And about 10 minutes later, he sent me back a signed contract and said, "We'll see you in a couple months." And then he started grilling me about, the music businesses and the challenges of what was going on. And it was an education for me as well, because I was getting grilled from what I found out later. I had no idea. I just thought this guy was somewhere. He's an incredibly successful businessman, and he was questioning me about, what's the music business like? What's going on? How does this work? And at the same time, I was getting a master's degree in business from him, and we did that for literally a couple years. And we went and played his party, and didn't think anything of it. He was just my buddy. And anyway, we were out playing golf one day, and he said, "What's it going to take to get Gwen to the next level?" And I said, "Well, it starts with a lot of money." And he said, "Well, how much?" And I said, "It's a lot. It's ridiculous." And I said, "It's going to take a lot of help." But we were at that point. We were at the point where I've got a solid business. I think where a lot of people screw up in the music business today is they think you need the money right off the bat. And first you need to craft your art. You need to get your art good. You need to see if the people like it. Get it out to the clubs, resonate it with people. They'll let you know real quick if it's not happening. You get out to the shows and you've played a circuit for a little while and there's still nobody showing up. It's probably a problem. And it's not the club owner, it's not the promoter, it's you. Every single time.
A lot of people don't want to admit that.
Exactly. It's, people come in and, to Flying Island now, they'll be like, "Why aren't I getting booked?" I'm like, "Let's listen to your music." 9 times out of 10, that's the problem. Yeah. It's not very good. But we'd moved past that point. We were like, "We're going to do this." And he just looked at me and said, "I'm going to help you." And because of that, we started the label. We started real small, and we went out and we found several record promoters, and I'd done everything in the music business minus promotion. I just had no idea. I didn't know what labels really did. I'd certainly worked for a lot of them, and to be honest, didn't really see eye to eye with most of them, and didn't know what they did or understood it. And all of a sudden it was, okay, well, now we're playing ball. Well, let's go hire some radio promotion teams. Let's get some things going here. And it's expensive. And we got out there, and the results we were getting, we didn't like. There was a lack of accountability. There was a lack of intensity. It was just tough. And we found what we were looking for didn't exist. And it was like, there's got to be other people that are getting to this point, and then they're just getting shut down, So the music business is incredibly tricky. It's incredibly difficult. But I said, I want to have a company that is for the people who have gone, they've done all the due diligence, they've done all the work, and they literally just need help. They need to know how to move the ball down the field a little bit more. And that's the basis of Flying Island Entertainment was how we can help people get to where they want to go, And because of that, we went out and found that hiring radio promotion outside doesn't work. So we went and got our own promotion team that's now in staff. We found that looking for attorneys is very difficult, and most of them give you really poor advice and they take your money. So now we brought attorneys on staff. We bought full business management on staff. And we brought in all the elements of the best people we could find. I've got, Sheila Shipley Biddy she was the first woman to ever run a major record label.
Yeah.
I went out and found the absolute cream of the crop, people to surround ourselves with who had the same thing. They were like, I'm tired of having my vision diluted and diluted and diluted until there's nothing left anymore. And it's proven successful, and then it was funny. It was like as soon as we started putting more positive energy in, and instead of just being defeated with it, just turning it around and continuing forward, things really changed. And it was like, then The Voice happened for Gwen, you know, and it was
a TV show.
Yeah, next thing you know, she's on a TV show. Okay, well now we've got radio and TV going, and you've got all these different elements that build into things. And of course, after the TV show, then Blake Shelton took her on the road. This new album's really turning into something that's spectacular. And so what I always try to say to everybody is, you don't know where your path is, and be open to those ideas, and being open to the realization that your idea of what it is probably isn't what it actually is going to end up being. And keep at it, and keep working. And people in the music business get more rejection in a day than probably most people get in their entire life.
Right.
We're told no, and that sucks. You should quit. Go home every day. And you really have to be able to take that stuff, get anything constructive out of it you can. Like I say, if people are telling you your music sucks, maybe it does. And maybe you need to think about what you're doing, reevaluate, and make it better. But don't just try and force feed the same stuff down people's throats. If it's not resonating, fix it, make it different, and stand out. There's a guy named Seth Godin, who's a marketing guy, and he wrote a book called Purple Cow. And he talks about, it's much more important to be unique and different. It's why you see there's great singers and there's great artists, and singers have hits and they come and go, but artists are here forever because they're doing something unique. They're doing something that nobody else can do. It's what's the adage? Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, and publicity, unique selling angle, USA. That is critical. If you don't have that, then you don't have anything to publicize, period. Yep. It's fluff, and people won't read it.
No, exactly.
And, sadly, because of reality TV and MTV and all the other TVs, you almost have to shock people in publicity these days.
Yep.
And so the whole time we're sitting here, I'm thinking, how would I market Gwen Sebastian?
Right.
What would I do?
Sure.
And I would have to lean on whatever it is that makes her unique.
Yep.
Like really lean on it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear all that's coming together. And I want to ask you something, because my brother and I, he invented a hardware product.
Okay.
We started marketing it in October 2010, brought in investors. We've spent almost $1 million. We just got it into Walmart. We're just now getting major distribution.
Great.
But it took $1 million and over 2 years' work.
Right.
Is that true for a music artist? I mean, do you have to have the money and the financial backing to make it?
There's different rules for everybody. And I think what you'd first have to do is determine what is making it. Looking back, I see a lot of people that have great careers they don't even realize that with slight tweaks, do you want to make $100,000 a year? Do you want to make $1 million a year? Do you want to make $20 million a year? What's your goal? And I see what fascinates me, which I just love, is seeing acts that go out, and they've got $1 million business, and they're under the radar, and they're playing 500 to 700 seaters, 3 or 4 times a week. They don't play any of the games. They don't have to play any of the ridiculousness. They've got a solid core fan base that will never leave, that will be there for them for eternity. In fact, there's another Seth Godin book. I love Seth. I think he's just...
Well, I'm going to pick those up.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Love books.
He talks
like
about, in his book Tribes, he takes Pearl Jam and says, Pearl Jam, when the height of their 10 album, had sold, I think it was almost 20 million units. And then they gave Ticketmaster the finger. Then they gave the major label the finger and said, screw it, we're done. And we all said, well, that's the end of Pearl Jam, you know. And I love them as a band, but I must admit I don't really keep up with what's going on. Until I read this book, I had no idea. And what essentially happened is they said, we're going to super serve our fans, and they do things, you know, like depending on how long you've been on their fan, what do you call it? Fan club.
Right.
Depending on how long you've been on their fan club, you get better seats. You can buy better seats at the show. They only play small venues. So all the venues are very intimate with their fans. They take really good care of them. All their fans get, Christmas presents. And they created this, I think what they said they started out with was a few 100,000 fans, which for most people, that would be enough.
Yeah.
You know, that would be a great start. But when you look at it in comparison to selling 20 million records, and you've got a few hundred core fans, it shows the power of publicity and stuff there. So when it was all gone, they were like, okay, let's just take care of these 300,000 fans, or whatever the number was. Don't quote me on that because I don't know. But and essentially they grew it, and they just said, we only care about our fans. We're only going to direct market to them, which costs nothing. You know, it's essentially web, and now you've got Facebook and Twitter and all these phenomenal ways of getting your music direct to people without you having to spend any of this money.
Right.
They started, I think they've grown it to where now they have like 22 million core fans, which means they have 22 million people that every T-shirt they buy, or every T-shirt Pearl Jam puts out, 22 million people buy it. Every album they put out, 22 million people buy it. Direct.
Yeah.
And I think to date they put out like 96 records, full albums. They do like live shows. They were the first band to ever do mobile recording on site.
Yeah.
And after you finish the show, you could literally go for $20. You know, you'd go and be able to take home the show you just saw.
Yep.
That was, you know, revolutionary. But to the rest of us, they just fell off the map. You know, to me, I was like, well, I guess they broke up. I don't know anything about it. And really, under the radar, talk about lucrative and successful.
It's brilliant.
And controllable, and not having to deal with any of the business, which, you know, it may sound like I'm putting myself out of business by talking about this, but I think that's the future. I think it's going to go back to direct fan and artist relations. You know, so when you talk about being successful, if you want to play the major radio game, you're going to have some money. Just there's a lot of politics that goes on. You're going to have a phenomenal team, one that really believes in you. You're going to have a lot of dough. Just when you think about traveling, you know, say you only took, you know, 200 radio stations, you know, and there's thousands of radio stations, you know, and it's, with country now being the largest format across the country, you know, you need to go visit these people and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. Do you think this is cool? Do you think this is fun? But you start adding up, you know, they want to see you come do a show where you're not going to get paid to go do that show.
Right.
Well, how much does it cost you to get your band on a plane and hire backline and get out there and, you know, promote it yourself and do that, and then multiply that times 200.
Yep.
You know, because before you really start releasing stuff, you're going to want to make sure you got some friends out there. And unfortunately and fortunately, there's kind of a filter. It's like, radio's job is to sell advertising. That's what they're in the business of, and a lot of people don't get that. They think they're in the music in the business of music,
playing songs.
They're into selling advertising, and they play the music so they can sell the advertising. But what you got to realize is when you're going to radio, you've got to understand that you're trying to bring them a product that will help them sell more advertising and bring them a new audience, or keep their audience longer. And sometimes that's not just a great song. There's a lot of phenomenal songs on there that if they don't keep a core audience for radio, they don't care.
Yeah. And,
you know, one of the hardest things to do is get ready to even listen. They're very busy. They're incredibly overworked. Fortunately, the ones we've come in contact are all music lovers, and I think they really want to help. But their, you know, budgets have been cut in radio. They've got to compete with all different kind of aspects of all things that are coming in. So their time's limited, and it's like, what are they going to be able to do for a certain amount of time? And so a lot of times you don't get heard. So if you want to play the big time radio game and compete with Taylor Swift and, you know, all the other pop country stars out there. Yeah, you need to get a record deal, or you need to have some major bucks behind you, and then find some great partners. And it's really difficult. And that's, at Flying Island, that's what we did. I went out and found the best cream of the crop people I could that had a heart of teachers that wanted to help people. Yeah. And it's, Nashville's got a kind of a dirty secret. There's a lot of people that make money off of everybody's dreams coming to town. They got a few $1,000 in their pocket.
Yeah.
They'll come down here. They'll, tell them they're going to be huge stars. Come with me. Next thing you know, they're broke. They're broke. They, their grandma gave them everything, and they don't have any product, and their career's no further down the line. At Flying Island, we certainly never tell anybody we're going to make them a big star, but we'll give them a shot. And when they're gone, we'll make sure that their career's further down the field than it was when they showed up, because there's very few home runs right off the bat. Right. It's usually base hits after go home for a little bit, base hit, go home for a little bit. Now we're to second base, and it's a long, tedious process. And you got to make sure that your career's keeping up with the promotion you're doing as well. And sometimes stepping back and realizing where you're at and absorbing that and thinking about what didn't work. It was I think Donald Trump had a great saying that he fails 10 times more often than he succeeds. But you can't let those failures slow you down. Just fail, figure it out, and keep going. I don't know have you ever seen the Gordon Ramsay show, The Kitchen Nightmares thing, where he talks about negative isn't negative, but we have to find our weaknesses, and it could be your music, it could be your team, it could be all these things, but sometimes we're sensitive as artists, we're creative, and therefore we're already scared to let the world hear what we got, and 9 times out of 10 we don't want to hear what they've got to say.
Right.
You can't let that stop you. Put it out there, see what you've got, see if you've got anything, and if not, change it. And keep working towards what you believe is your future, while taking in all of the negatives and not using them as negatives. They're just information. Yes lives in the land of no. The two are connected, and the people getting the most yeses are also getting the most no's. So I think it's almost a good exercise for musicians, artists, no matter what you're doing. Make it your goal to get as many no's as possible. Get people to tell you no. And the more people that tell you no, you're also going to find an equal amount of people telling you yes. And that's what you're looking for, so don't be afraid of the negativity. It comes with the territory. And, it's like when the vacuum salesman comes to your house and tries to sell you the vacuum and you tell him no, that doesn't mean you hate him as a person. You just don't want to buy a vacuum cleaner.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that he's not welcome to come back and try and sell you a newspaper. It's just you don't want a vacuum cleaner. And doesn't even mean you might not want one in the future. Just right now you're not interested in it. Sure. And don't take that personally, and let that destroy your goals and your dreams.
I think that's why, like you said earlier, sometimes a really, really good artist is pure creative, and they don't have good business acumen. And it's the vulnerability that can shut them down quickly, hearing no, especially if they came from being a big fish in a small pond.
Sure.
In Little Town, Arkansas. They come to Nashville, and it's brutal. There are many of you. There's thousands of great singers and drummers and guitar players, and to stand out here, it takes a team. And so I want to ask you, if we look at Seth's vision on Pearl Jam, let's call that the Pearl Jam approach.
Sure.
Would your company, Flying Island, is it more, let's do it the Pearl Jam way and serve our fans, or is it, well, if a big label came and ate us up or grabbed our artists, that's what we want?
There's different things, different strokes for different folks. We like to take a bottom-up and a top-down approach at all times. We want to make sure that we are at the bottom. Let's call that we should probably look at it parallel. I don't want to call the fans the bottom and the radio the top. It could be either way. But let's just, let's call it a foundation. You want to make sure you're always going after fans as the primary goal. The reason to get on radio is to get to fans. It's a quick way to get to fans. The reason to get on GAC, CMT, MTV is because you're getting to your core fans. It's not to be famous. You want people to hear your art, and it's a quicker way of getting to your art. If you don't have those means, figure out ways that you can. There's so many simple ways now. There's I see people have huge success on YouTube just singing covers.
Yeah.
Just literally sitting in their kitchen singing covers and getting 1 million plus hits on it.
Yeah.
That's reactionary. That means people are interested. On top of that, you want to be coming from the top as well. And then there's different avenues. There's a lot of tipping points where, if you don't have the funding, then you need to find the funding if you're going after the pop thing. Now, that could be from an individual investor, or that could be from a major record label.
One question I love to ask everyone. Let's say you just moved to Nashville today. What advice would you have for somebody moving here to network, to find work, to find a company like Flying Island Entertainment? What does a person do who just moves here? Networking
is incredibly important, and I think that the biggest thing to know when you're trying to network is to not network. Whatever you do, don't network. I see so many people come here. They're passing out 500 business cards here and there. I'm a drummer, blah, 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 blah. Networking is and that's what the general concept of networking is for people. Make real relationships. Sit down with people for whatever time it is, and be interested in more being their friend and being interested in what they're doing as well. And in return, they'll be interested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to hire you off of a business card. Nobody's even going to hire you if you're really good. If I'm a drummer moving to town, there's 1 million drummers that are really good.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's 1 million drummers that are way better than I am and will ever be. But I've managed to work, and I think I'm interested in helping other people do what they do. Zig Ziglar had a great comment where he said, get anything you want out of life if you're willing to help enough other people get what they want. And that couldn't be more true in the music business. If you want to be a successful session drummer, then your focus is, how do I help songwriters get the best product they can? How do I, so go find songwriters and just sit down and say, hey, what are you doing? What can I do to help you? How can I be involved? And more than anything, how can I be your friend?
Yeah.
And you want to be part of the music community. But if you come to town and your goal is just to do business, and I see a lot of people get very frustrated with it, and they get jaded towards now. Nashville sucks and it doesn't work. It's not the town, it's you. You've come here and you've just barraged us with your business cards and your how great you are.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, nobody's listening. Be different, be genuine, be who you are, and be a real person, and be willing to help people and genuinely help people.
Yeah.
And don't ever do it with the heart of, I'm going to help this person for a little while and then I'm going to be able to make money.
Right.
Just do it with, I want to help you.
Yeah.
And I want to be part of what you're doing because I enjoy what you're doing. Don't be part of things you're not genuinely into. There's nothing wrong with telling somebody, this isn't for me.
Right.
And get yourself involved with projects you believe in, people that are in the same route, and just be genuine. Be the real deal,
Because you've answered that differently than anyone else I've had on the show, I really appreciate that. I'm going to throw in my 2 cents.
Come on.
I wanted to meet Jason Sheff, singer for Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that he lived in this neighborhood somewhere. And I thought, okay, I can probably find him through, the neighborhood roster or whatever, but what do I have to offer Jason? And I thought, well, what does Jason need? The guy tours constantly. Chicago does 150, 200 shows a year. He needs books.
Wow.
He's on the bus. He's flying. He needs books. What are my favorite books that I think Jason Sheff would like? I found his email, and I said, Jason, I wanted to meet you. It was very upfront. I've always wanted to meet you. I think you're a great singer, great bass player. And I had an idea. You travel a lot. Here are my favorite books. Let me know what you think of them. I got an email back 7 minutes later. 7 minutes later. We had lunch the next day. Just like that, by doing something for him that sincerely I thought he might like this.
Yeah.
Not what can you do for me.
No.
I didn't need him to do anything for me.
That's a perfect example.
I just wanted to meet him.
Non-network networking.
Yeah.
Here's somebody you genuinely wanted to meet because you respect him as an artist,
right.
Not because you wanted him to help you or you felt that there was some business to be done here.
Right.
And it's almost the business should almost be the after effect. It's the subproduct of great relationships. It's success to me comes from opportunity and encouragement. I think that's the real mix. And so how do you get opportunity and encouragement? And it's from people, and it's from real relationships with people. Spend time with them, be interested in what they're doing, help them do what they do, and you'll get that opportunity and encouragement. And the money comes very later. If you get into the music business trying to make money, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
You're in big trouble. So,
you better love it.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
It's a way of life. It's not a, we all see the rock star life and we think that's the norm, but it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hard work.
What's next for Flying Island Entertainment?
Flying Island is branching out, and we're constantly trying to find places in the music business that don't currently exist. The most recent product that we've launched, I guess, is a service for classic country artists. We've got B.J. Thomas and Terry Clark just signed up. Rex Allen Jr. is on board, and we got some other people coming up soon. And what we're doing is, radio kind of turns their back on the golden era after a while. If you're not hot, you're not on the top 40 radio, but these are still legitimate artists. They're still out working. They still have products, and they still want to get it to the people. So what we've done is we put together a proprietary list that's all the stations that still play these artists, and most of them aren't monitored, so we don't have a chart for that. And just trying to help reconnect them with fans and take what they're doing and let their fans know what they're doing too, because they're still there, and it's like the fans feel underserved too.
Sure.
And these people have been there. They've all had, huge #1 records. They've built this great core fan base, and, a lot of them aren't hip to MySpace, Facebook, and Twitter and whatever, but they still need to be able to communicate. So we're working on that. We've got some great new product coming out for Gwen this year, which we're super excited about. We're going to be signing probably another 2 or 3 acts as equity artists. We're always doing our promotion services, and I would say no matter what it is you do, let me help you do it. You need to know how to get a professional photographer. Let me help you. Let me show you who you need to call, because there's networking involved in that. It's everything you do in the music business has got issues that come with it. And you need to be building your people, and let me show you the people I've found that took me years. It's taken me 20 years to find the right people to work with that'll actually help you get your product done. You need some production done. Let me hook you up with some great producers that'll actually make sure that you get a great product. Everybody's just worried about money. This guy's cheaper than this guy, and this guy's cheaper than this guy. Don't worry so much about that. Put out a great product. Yeah. Put out a great product and come talk to us, and let's figure out what it is you're looking to do, and we want to help you do it. I wanted it to be the company that wasn't there when I was looking. Right. And I think we've done that.
That's cool. Excellent. I want to do a follow-up with you.
Okay.
In a few months.
Sure.
And see how things have progressed, especially with the
Absolutely.
wonderful Gwen here who's sitting next to you. So, Louis, thank you so much for being on the show, and look forward to having you back.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Music City Social. If you or someone you know would be a great guest on Music City Social, please visit musiccitysocial.net and click the Recommend a Guest link at the top of the page. Music City Social is produced by Star Maker PR Group, providing publicity and public relations services to the entertainment industry. Learn more at starmakerpr.com.